Online furniture auctions are fun.
Most of the time you end up getting a really good piece at a really good price.
But sometimes there's a few surprises.
Sometimes they're good surprises.
Like this piece of luggage that we got for $5.
And sometimes they're bad surprises.
Like this nightstand.
With only one small picture, it's quite hard to tell what you're actually buying. This nightstand, it looked like someone had glued a mouse pad down to it, and it also looked like taking a trip down the stairs. It was quite battered and broken.
And the dresser, it had a few issues as well. It looked as if they had had a lot of fun with a construction adhesive. So if you stick around to the end of the video, we're going to do something a bit different on this one, and we're going to go through the numbers of what we paid for the pieces, what the cost of materials were, and
profits, or did we make any profits at all?
So stick with us and we'll walk you through this one. All right, this dresser that we cleaned up yesterday, in looking at it today and inspecting the drawers, one of the drawers has been, let me just show you. Somebody tried to repair a drawer. There's some sort of brown glue here that they've made a big mess. They've got the corner just a big mess. They've put nails through here. And on this side, well, you can see what sort of mess that is. That's a huge mess. And there is just no way that that will come apart clean and can be fixed. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove these decorative moldings, make a new drawer. Usually I would not buy a unit like this, but this was bought at auction. I didn't go and inspect the pieces beforehand, and after you've already bought them, it's a bit too late. So all I can do is fix it. And we're just going to do the second one the same way.
So to make the new drawer, I decided to use poplar. Poplar is a good choice for a couple of reasons. It's very easy to work with. It's also quite a light hardwood. The last thing we wanted to do would be put a big heavy oak drawer in a piece like this. It just would feel out of place. But it's a comparable weight to what's already there. The other big advantage of using poplar is in the southeast United States, it's very, very economical because it's mostly grown locally. So I started out by just rough cutting the boards just to make them more manageable, and then I ripped the pieces I was going to use for the front down into a couple of thinner strips. The piece of poplar I had was just a little bit too small, so by making it into strips I could alternate the grain direction so that it's not going to have much movement over the years. So I then took these strips over to the jointer. What a jointer does is it makes one side perfectly flat. It then lets you roll the piece over and run it against the fence on the side, gets you a perfectly square 90-degree corner. It's not a tool everyone has, and if you don't have one, a lot of the hardwood stores where you buy this lumber, they will actually run it through a jointer and a planer up to the specifications that you're looking for. Now the panel was going to be the front. I went ahead and just put some biscuits in it and started gluing it up. I'm using Titebond 3 here mostly because it still works down to 45 degrees, and this was obviously in early March. It was just a little bit chilly. I just wanted to have the extra comfort of using a glue that would be suitable for the temperature. So I popped the clamps on it and then just went ahead and left it overnight. So I cut the pieces that were going to be used on the side. I just cut them down to width first, and then I just trimmed them to length. The next step was to cut a dado or a slot into all of the drawer pieces. This is just going to be where the drawer bottom is going to sit, and I'm just doing this on the table. So I've got what they call a dado blade in there. It's pretty much two blades together, so you can cut much wider cuts. Now this slot's a 1/4 of an inch deep, and it's up a corresponding distance to the rest of the drawers because we have to get the drawer runner underneath. And for joinery, I'm just doing simple rabbets on the front and the back of the drawer. Again, using the dado blade, I just dialed it up to make it as thick as the side pieces of the drawer. I'm using an old crosscut sled I converted to do dado cuts like this safely. You want to be careful when you're cutting a board that's longer than it is wide on table. So if you don't have a crosscut sled or a miter gauge, there's not a great deal of ways you can do it safely. So once all the pieces were cut to size, it was just a case of popping them in some clamps and just getting a good amount of glue on there and just leaving it overnight to fully cure. Decided to actually leave this 2 days because I knew Ray was about to be on it with a hammer, and I figured the more time it had to cure, the better. Just obviously checking everything square. Because I took my time and I used my jointer and planer to make all the pieces identical, it was pretty much square right off the bat, but a couple of adjustments and ended up with a nice new drawer that's not too heavy, and it's exactly the same size as the piece it's replacing. I came back to it a couple of days later. It was a little bit of cleanup needed with the glue, so I just chisel knocked them out and then just finally finished it out with a little bit of sanding. It's as long as you use enough glue and not too much, you generally don't have too much of a hard time cleanup. Now the drawer runner on this is a metal drawer runner that went in the bottom, so I'll just transfer the marks from the previous drawer, a couple of cuts, and then just knock out the waste with a chisel. And then with the new drawer fully assembled and fully cured, it was time to take it over to Thor and let her do her worst.
And now the challenge is getting these moldings back on the front of it. So here we go. Okay. Need a bigger hammer.
I got a bigger one outside if you want the really big one. I think it's a pound.
That depends on whether we actually want to have the moldings intact.
The drawer's not that strong, bear in mind.
It's stronger than the one that came out of it. Yeah, that one's good. On the top of this, as you saw in the pictures, it had like a sticky pad that had been pulled off at some point. I didn't notice it in the photos, but of course after we picked it up I did. So what we're going to do is remove this, and what I have in this container, it's a mixture of denatured alcohol and probably acetone, I'm not sure, but a lot of times I use it to clean stuff out of brushes, or in this case sticky stuff. And if you just put it on there, it makes it go all gooey. If you're planning on keeping your finish, this may not be the way to go, but I'm not planning on keeping the finish on this. So we're just going to put it on here. I've got a, you can't tell it now, but it's a brass bristle brush. And so it's quite textured, and I'm just going to get this and start trying to peel this off. It's all gooey. It's quite gross. If a little does well, a lot will do better, huh? Yeah, a lot does better. Alex laughs at me because I keep the containers from the dishwasher pods, and that's what I use to dispose of my stripping goo. Those of you who have watched this channel before know what this is. This is my trusty Bondo board, and we've been together for quite some time now. and I've actually sanded it down so that I can start making another mess of it. Gonna get a little Bondo. Whee! A little bit of hardener. Okay, that's all I see on that one. I'm gonna overfill this one because I got a feeling I'm gonna have to shape it here in a minute when it starts setting up. For those of you that do Bondo, if you leave it really thick on your scraper like this, it's easier to just pull it off later. Okay, we're just gonna let that dry and we'll come back and sand it whenever it's hardened up. So let's move on to something else. Yesterday I mixed up some Bondo, fixed the edge to this piece. It had a little corner chip and it had one over here as well. So we're just gonna go ahead and sand those smooth. Now we're ready to go ahead and prime this piece. I'm gonna prime this piece. I don't want any bleed through later. I'm probably gonna go dark green, but I just don't want to take the chance on this bleeding through. So we'll go ahead and prime it with some Ben's primer, and that will stop any bleed through that might come through from this dark wood. Usually I like to roll Ben's, but with these moldings, I'm also gonna have to use a small sponge brush. Okay, now that we have this piece all primed, it's ready to be painted. And it took me some time to decide what color I was going to paint this, but I think we're going to go with a sage green. So now that we have the ornate dresser and nightstand painted, I've gotten the hardware cleaned up. I cleaned that up with a bit of Brasso, and we're going to go ahead and put these on, and then these pieces will be ready to go to their new home. I think they look really great. I'm absolutely thrilled with them. This is the new drawer that Alex made. Molding's all back on it, and it just looks lovely, like it's always been there. So we're going to get that on, and then we'll show you the finish. If you found this video helpful, please remember to like and subscribe. All of your support is greatly appreciated. We have been overwhelmed with all of the subscribers, and we really appreciate it. It's just fantastic. So thank you so much if you've already subscribed, and if you haven't, please do so. We would love to have you back. And we're gonna let Alex do the numbers on this.
Okay, so this dresser we paid $25 for at the auction. You got to bear in mind there's going to be fees on top of that, so we actually paid $31.56. Now this little nightstand, we did really well. We only paid $7.50 for it. So that was $9.47 with by the time fees and taxes were added. The poplar that we purchased for replacing this drawer was $17, which is the real reason you want to go to a hardwood lumber store if you have one near you, because if you bought that at a big retail store, it would have been about 3 times the price. It was around about $10 on paint and primer to do both of these pieces, and top coat was about the same, so that's another $10. And there was around about $4 of consumables, sandpaper, rollers, things like that. So our total spend for both these pieces was $84.03.
And tomorrow a buyer will be picking it up and paying $345 for the set.
So that's a profit of $262.97.
Which is great. And I think that the turnaround time on this was about 6 hours on my side.
To build a new drawer, it was about an hour's work in the shop, spread across a couple of days, but it wasn't much work.
When you're buying at auction, you also have to figure in transportation, so gas prices, and with them fluctuating as they do, you've got to kind of figure that into your cost and try and pick up multiple pieces at the same time to bring that cost down. You can easily get caught up in the bidding.
Yes, it's best to stick to your limits and know your limits before you start bidding, because when pickup comes, you can get all sorts of surprises. As much as furniture flipping's about the quality of your finish, it's also about doing that problem solving along the way too.
And always, what we try to do is know what that piece will sell for when it's done. And that way we know how much room we've got to play with if there are problems, and can we take care of them.